move on. So, what just happened? I wanted to just kind of explore. This has been the result of months of reading and thinking, going to online conferences and seminars. And so this is my perceptions, things that I've picked up from the global church and the national church, not just Episcopal, not just New Jersey. Here are some trends which we've experienced throughout the country. Churches which have now gone back to in-person worship, their attendance is substantially lower than it was before the quarantine. 60% lower for most parishes. And so across the country, churches that have reopened, attendance is only 36% of pre-COVID levels. You know that we had. Oh, I've actually started. Press the record button. Yes, it is. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Can you please mute yourselves, everybody? Thanks. As you know, we responded by opening in July, and the response made me think probably overestimated people's level of caution about coming back. So we were rarely over a dozen people at either of the two services on Saturday and Sunday. And towards the end in November, we actually, our final service had one person and 3 people. So people were clearly, voting with their feet, not fully confident that we were kind of completely safe yet. Plus, it also has to be noted that the experience of being here was just not, what we're used to. We had to wear masks, we had to be 6 feet apart, no sharing of the peace, no singing, communion in only the bread, not the wine. So really, as a comparison with our regular worship experience, many of us, I think, just found that what we were doing on 9 o'clock on Sunday morning streaming was much more enjoyable and felt like a better act of worship. So we did take the decision when we spiked again in November to suspend, and we are now suspended from in-person worship. The advice from the diocese is that when a county's infection rate reaches 25 per 100,000 people, churches should seriously consider suspending. Union County is currently 49, and we were as high as 80 a couple of weeks ago. So when it comes down to 25, it will then be back on the agenda for should we start meeting again in person. 22% of church attenders have stopped going to in-person or digital church in the last 10 months. Nearly a quarter of churchgoers have not gone to church. It's across the country, either online or in person, and half of millennials. Now this is kind of disturbing and startling, and there's no way to sugarcoat this. The reality is that I think, clearly the country has changed, the world has changed, and people's church attendance patterns will also be changing.
What yes?
Please, everyone, mute.
Okay.
Online engagement has declined substantially compared to before Easter. This again across the whole country. Churches.
Yeah, I do, but I'm listening to this thing.
Well, you can listen to it. It's down in your lap, and then I can hear it too.
Okay, well, I'll come over there then.
You can unmute. You can mute everybody as the host. There's a mute.
How do I do that?
Under participants, you'll be able to select mute all.
I see. Yeah, thank you. Okay, great. Thank you for that. Yeah, so what we found is that, we had a huge rush of online participation at the services from March onwards, because, you know, church attendance always peaks in crisis. But as the crisis has become normalized, so online attendance has fallen back. Now onto some good news. Churches generally are unified by challenges. And my perception is that St. Paul's at this time, you know, it certainly has done that. The response of people to our outreach ministries, to Mission Kitchen, outreach through the day school, gifts to the Rector's discretionary fund, many ways that people have just stepped forward and said that they wanted to help the community through the church, which is wonderful. Also, something that's positive, I think, is that congregations around the country have been exposed to a variety of worship experiences. I've had folks say to me, it's been just so nice to have morning prayer again. You know, people are seeing that there's more to the prayer book than, you know, page 356 or whatever it is onwards. And that, I think, is a positive thing. Yes, we're missing communion. Yeah, it's going to be wonderful to get back and take communion in both forms. But you know, I think what this has done for us is to just help us diversify our view of what is Anglican Episcopal worship, and to embrace it and enjoy new forms. Innovation has accelerated. A year ago, none of us could even have spelt Zoom, and now we have tech going through the roof. Online giving has taken off. We have made many technological innovations, including turning the you know, written communications into a twice weekly newsletter. Now it's the long-term weekly Inspire, 5 minutes at lunchtime, which we introduce, quick messages from me and others, push notifications, the phone app. We just bought a camcorder as well, which is the gift of a church member, which will enable us to improve our quality of video as well as our frequency of it. So all of this has been good. You know, crisis accelerates innovation. People have rallied around small and community, you know, across the country. You know, Amazon's algorithm knows me pretty well. Google's algorithm knows like everything about me. But there's nothing quite like going to a shop and somebody knowing your name, or going to church and you know, the priest knows who you are and knows the names of your kids. And you know, nobody should be out localing the local church. So in this time where people are so missing, you know, physical contact, you know, that there are great opportunities for us to continue to build small and build community, offering stuff that, you know, the larger things, online things, can't provide. Okay, our competitive advantage is not that we're big and bulletproof, but that we're human and we care. Resistance to change has diminished. You know how good churches are, you know, splitting about things and having fights about trivia. You know, oh, you know, they moved the piano 6 inches. You know, stuff like that, which may have kind of, you know, interested us and even obsessed us a year ago, now look pretty inadequate. You know, a real crisis has put into perspective those things that we used to find to niggle us. And so resistance to change has melted. You know, we've had to change. We've had no choice. You know, it's been imposed on us by a pandemic. And that, I think, is in a way a positive thing. Let's grab something positive out of that. You know, it enables us to stop and just think and reset and reboot, and you know, just think about, okay, so where do we go from here? Justice is back on the national agenda. I said it in written form in the summer that one of the reasons I thought God had allowed this pandemic to happen is that the entire country could be off work, watching TV or looking at their phones and their iPads and watching the murder of George Floyd in a way that we would not have watched it if it had been normal times. Because through that event and other, you know, deaths around that time, we as a country have had the opportunity to examine ourselves, to look at our past, and also look at how the sins of the past still have not been dealt with, and how we're still, you know, currently sinning in ways that really have to change. Now that passion has diminished over the months, but it's still there, I think, and it does, you know, as a local parish with an increasingly diverse community, I think it does give us opportunities to be doing creative things in our wider society. The hard reset has ushered in healthier habits. I hope that's true of you personally. I hope that you can point to some things that, you know, you've taken on in the last 10 months, so maybe some things that you've stopped, you know, some bad habits that you've stopped. Maybe like you're exercising more, eating more healthily, got more time with family, you're reading more, maybe praying more, and you know, take those with you. You know, don't waste the opportunity of a good pandemic. You know, take those healthier habits with you, and we as a community, as a parish church, we got to do that too. Some of the things we've been learning communally. Many people who did not go to in-person worship a year ago have started going to worship online. We have folks viewing every week from Virginia, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Tennessee, England, Wales, as well as our snowbirds in Florida. Now, I'm excited by that. It seems to me, and this is the massive takeaway that I want to present you with, that the future for St. Paul's cannot be just going back to the way we were with just in-person worship. What I think we've learned is that we are able to connect with high quality worship opportunities with people who do not go to church. And that has to continue even when we are back meeting in person without any restrictions. That's not to say, you know, we stop having our main focus as in person, because in person worship will always be our main focus. That's where our time and our energy and our resources will mostly be located. But we will, I believe, increasingly become a two-congregation parish, the larger in-person worship parish and a digital parish as well, which is going to be challenging in many ways, which we will touch on a little bit now, but also much later on as we go through the year together. Here are some stats. Total weekend attendance from mid-March to the end of December. In 2019, only in person, 9442, with in-person, in-person and online, 11,500. The average weekend attendance rose from 224 to 274 for that period. This is taking one view on YouTube as being one person. So it's an overcount in one respect, because some people will be on there for 30 seconds and did they really attend church? Well, no, not really. You can't really count them. So it counts them, unfortunately, but it also undercounts, because when 2, 3 or 4 people are watching one stream, that counts as one view. So hopefully those two things balance out, and that's reasonably accurate. Look at an Easter attendance. In person in 2019 to online attendance last year. For Christmas, pretty similar, except that we had 3 in-person services in 2019 and 2 online services in 2020. Other midweek events that we stream, things like the 5 minutes at lunchtime, Holy Week, little things from me like the New Year's Day prayer that I posted, over 3,000 views. And here's a clear takeaway. In 2020, services that appeal to irregular worshippers and non-worshippers, like Christmas, Easter, Advent carols, over 400 people view the Advent carols service, baptisms and so forth, heavily outperformed their in-person equivalents in 2019, showing us clearly that irregular or non-worshippers, we've found a way of reaching them if we work on that engagement and continue to produce quality stuff. So here's a caveat. Attendances at all types of events were substantially larger at the beginning of the pandemic than now, as the crisis has become normalized. Here's some more important stats, really. Facebook followers, because this is about, you know, real engagement. This is not people who have a 5-minute hit of a video once. This is people who have expressed an interest in forming relationship with us. Facebook followers up, Facebook likes up, YouTube subscribers has risen just by 9 people just in January. SoundCloud subscribers up 3 in just the last week. All-time plays on SoundCloud, the podcast of the sermon, is now nearly 8,500 downloads in over 50 countries. And our phone app, which we only introduced less than a year ago, now has 156 names in it. That is growing steadily. If you're not in it yet, do it. Download the phone app, get your name in the directory, your picture as well. These are ways in which we stay in touch. So just to finish my report, what should we be preparing for right now? I wish I could provide you a hopeful list, but I can't. Uncertainty, instability, economic strangeness. All right, it's going to be weird. We're going to see in a few moments' time in Kevin's report that but for the PPP grant, we would have made a handsome loss last year. With it, we made a decent profit, but we are currently around 30 households who pledged last year who have not pledged this year, we're short by some margin on our expected or our goal. I'm not too disheartened about that, because many people have told me that due to their uncertain circumstances in work, they can't pledge, but they will continue to give as they're able. So I expect that we'll still get a lot of money coming in the plate and in ad hoc giving, but we just won't be calling it pledge. But it is strangeness. I've read that if we are not getting 60% of our gifts in electronic form, there's something wrong, because people are not going to want to handle money and checks now. They're not going to want to handle a plate as it comes round, just for health reasons. Opportunity, there's tons of it. I invite you to do in the next few months is, think about your involvement. We could reboot our committees, reboot our fellowship life, our outreach, our worship, so that when all the restrictions come off, then we can be renewed and entering a new phase of our life. And staff reallocation. That's already actually happening right now. We've taken the decision that when we get our new curate, which we hope will happen this year, the budget we've set does not include money for a curate to replace John Francis. But if we get another PPP loan in the second half of the year, that may well become a possibility. And if we do that, that person will be dedicated to ministry for children, young families, students youth, maybe the chaplain of the day school as well. And they will be a really kind of focused on you know, the biggest potential that we have, which is in young families. Now that will relieve Erica, our amazing children's ministry director, of her duties, which means she will be becoming our director of digital communications, which is, you know, clearly where we need to be putting some more resources right now if we're going to make the most of all the opportunities. So Erica has already begun that kind of transition, but when we get a curate, she'll make a full transition, and then hopefully we can really have a dynamic, you know, website, social media presence, you know, push notifications on phones, and all of that good stuff to keep in touch with folk. So questions for the next 7 months, briefly. How do we measure success? What do we have permission to stop doing now? Things that maybe used to work that don't now. What would we do if we were leading a startup? Because in many ways we are. And if you have experience of a startup in business life, you know, I want to hear from you, because there are things you might be able to teach us in the church about, you know, okay, so just suppose we were starting a brand new church, what would we do? Who would we contact? How would we do it? Where are we seeing real momentum? What does this make possible? What will St. Paul's look like 5 years from now? And tellingly, 2 years from now, what will we wish we had done?